Hello, carries and carcinogens. My name is TBSguy, and there's a new animated trailer out for the launch of the Wild Rift mobile version of League of Legends. Well, launch in some places anyway. Some other places couldn't get it because of technical difficulties and stuff. Doesn't matter to me because I'm not really gonna play League of Legends on my phone. That's not my kind of thing. But my kind of thing is animation, especially the kind of animation that's on display in this particular short. This short was created by Blur Studios, who have worked with League of Legends and Riot Games on multiple things before. They've done the animated trailer for Valorant, for example. They also did the Warriors trailer that came out. Was that the 2019 season? That also actually featured Lux quite prominently. And they've done a whole bunch of other work as well. They're very prominent, very prolific studio, very high-quality work, and that's certainly on display in this particular trailer. Although I do wish it hadn't dropped today, because the goddamn KDA music video is also dropping today, Riot. Why, can't you pace your shit out for once? You can't just drop 8 champions in like 2 months, and then 2 animated teasers all on top of each other in the same I have other stuff to do! Anyway. Thankfully, the trailer is at least really quite good, and there's a number of very clever little things going on in it. And so, the most relevant question to ask right off the bat, I suppose, is what is this trailer meant to do? Like, we have all this animated nonsense going on. What's it supposed to do as a product? And what it's supposed to do is supposed to sell you Wild Rift. Well, not sell you the game, because that's free to play, but sell you the experience. Like, if you pick up League of Legends Wild Rift on your mobile device, this is all the fun that you're gonna have. Like, and it's like, obviously not literal gameplay, but this is the feeling that they want you to have. Like, this is the kind of experience that they want you to think that you can have in League of Legends Wild Rift one way or another. And there's a couple of clever little things that they do in order to sell that particular experience. Now, I wish I could play the trailer for you with audio, but unfortunately I can't because the trailer contains a cover of You Really Got Me by The Kinks by some other group, 2WRAI or something. They added a rap verse to it. It sounds like a really cool version of the song, but I can't play it because YouTube copyright blah blah, and I would like to, make money so I can make rent and stuff. So you'll just have to get by with the background music that I'm gonna edit onto this thing in the aftermath. And the way that this trailer is constructed is actually quite clever, at least for my money, because we start with Jinx. She's the connecting tissue, essentially, that holds this trailer together. Why does everybody get together on the Wild Rift? Well, because of her, because of this crazy lady. And Jinx, so as far as I can tell from some of the marketing, has kind of become a little bit of a front woman for League of Legends Wild Rift, because Wild Rift in general seems to be being pitched as a slightly more sort of up-tempo, slightly more fun, air quotes, like slightly more silly, slightly more cartoony, slightly more casual in some ways. Like, I'm sure people are already competitive as hell in Wild Rift, but a slightly more casual version of the experience, as you would expect from a mobile game. So Jinx is kind of taking on the role of point man or point woman or point crazy for that particular aspect of the game. And so she's also the connective tissue for this teaser trailer. But what's clever about the way that this trailer is constructed is that as we go through it, we encounter multiple different people who have multiple different reasons, or who are missing multiple different kinds of things, and then they happen to find it on the Wild Rift. Now, Jinx, she's just a troublemaker. She's a chaos agent. She just wants to blow stuff up and have fun and mess around, and that's literally the only reason. Like, why is Jinx playing Wild Rift? Because she's a crazy person who just wants to, like, screw around and do crazy stuff. That's really the only reason why. But there are other reasons to play Wild Rift as well. Here's Lux. She's doing her homework. Oh, she doesn't want to do the homework. Books. Oh, man, I don't want to. What she longs for, what she wants more than anything else, is to escape into a fantasy world where she can be the hero of her own story and, like, take down powerful monsters and go on adventures and just do anything other than study these boring books that seem to be full of, like, the little thing that your optometrist shows you when they're trying to figure out how blind you are, and there's like, would you read the top line of this? That seems to be what's in the book here, along with a bunch of gold inlays, which seems very expensive for a textbook. Anyway, Lux is the bored person who doesn't want to do homework, but who wants to escape into a fantasy world, and that, in terms of what this trailer is selling us, is what Wild Rift is offering us. So Jinx shows up. Let me take a selfie. And drags her into a fantasy world. Yasuo, though, is a very different beast overall. Yasuo is bored because nothing challenges him. Like, he's being attacked by this over-enthusiastic, I think it's a Brotherhood of Navori guy, or maybe one of Sed's disciples, it's not clear, and he's fighting him off with just the little teaspoon that he's using, and he's having absolute, like, it's the most boring thing he's done in his life. He's fought off 50 guys already. No challenge for him. He longs for an opportunity to unsheath his sword, which is not being used. It's just lying there in front of him, completely pointless, because he doesn't need it. He has no, like, there's nothing to challenge him, nothing to give him anything to work with. He's just beating these guys up over and over. Oh my god, it's so boring. Which is when Jinx bursts in. Hey, wanna go fight some cool, powerful guys? Or rather, she offers him a challenge, essentially. Like, she bursts in with a minigun and challenges him to a fight, essentially. Which gets Yasuo's attention. And you'll note that he pounces down, grabs his sword, and dashes at her just as the portal goes off. Then there's poor Blitzcrank. Now, Blitzcrank isn't really after adventure. He's not really after a challenge. He just wants a friend, man. Like, he's sitting here playing catch with this inanimate pile of junk that he put together into the vague shape of a person because he's just so lonely. All he wants is a friend. Where could he possibly find one? Oh! Hey, guess where Blitzcrank is gonna find his friend? In Wild Rift, the new mobile game coming to mobile devices from Riot Games. Come find your friend, find your adventure, find your challenge. That is what this teaser trailer fundamentally is doing. That's the experience that it's selling to you. Like, oh, are you bored in class and do you want to procrastinate doing literally anything other than the work you're supposed to do? Are you just a mad chaos person who wants to have fun? Are you looking for a hardcore challenge? Do you miss your friends and do you want to make new social connections? Come to Wild Rift, everybody. It's open now, except if you're in certain regions because we had technical difficulties and the game couldn't launch. Come on down to Wild Rift's like friendship and game emporium for a good time. That's what the trailer is selling you. It's these different people who have different wants and needs, and the trailer is saying you can get them all met right here. And from a narrative perspective, that's a really clever way to do things, because also in terms of, like, if we ignore all of the sales pitch, if we ignore all of the real-world context, it also creates instantly, in terms of like the dynamic between the characters that we see in the thing, we instantly get a fun little character dynamic that can lead to moments like this one, for example, where everyone else has just watched like the enemy team assembling, and Lux is like, adventure, and Yasuo is like, challenge, and Teemo and Blitzcrank are like, we're friends now, and they're getting ready, like, we're getting ready to pounce into combat, and then Jinx is like, whoosh, shoots a rocket at them, because you know what? We're just here to GG and have fun, my friends. Whee! And the animation is absolutely excellent, by the way. Let's talk about the character animation and the staging. The staging is also very good. Because we begin the teaser trailer with this, like, we've got this lens blur going on, and then we have this indeterminate green fog just kind of floating in the background. And that's going to be the backdrop for most of what's going to be happening in Jinx's section. Like, mostly we just get this sort of amorphous green fog floating in the background that places her in no particular space. Like, it's somewhere where there's green fog, but that's about all we know. And if you know something about League of Legends, you can figure, okay, probably Zaun, but the space itself is indeterminate. And there's a point to that. It's because we don't want the environment, the background, the place where she is to be distracting from what the action of the opening of the teaser trailer actually is, which is, first of all, showing off that she's a silly person who's doing crazy stuff for fun, but it's also this kind of badass sort of Batman suiting up to take on the thing. It's a suiting up trailer where, like, we see her gear, we see her spinning up the minigun, putting a band-aid on her knee, spinning her gun around, getting ready, and then this lovely little shot of the chewing gum. And I do like the detail that the chewing gum, you see how it starts out kind of dark, then it gets backlit, so it gets really bright and pink, and then as it stretches out more and more and more, it gets, like, the pink gets less and less saturated, it gets whiter and whiter, and we see more and more of the texture showing up on the chewing gum. That's just such a good detail. Like, it's, like, that's what chewing gum looks like when you actually blow it, but I just thought it was a lovely detail. And I also like the way it pops. 2 frames. That's all it is. It's just these 2 frames. And then it's applied, like, essentially as a texture on her face, which I thought was lovely. And then the little meta detail that the device that Jinx uses to access the Wild Rift is essentially a mobile phone. Kind of almost looks like a mobile phone with one of those controller attachments put onto it. Like, it has that form factor. But it's also a camera because she takes a selfie with Lux with it at some point, which is lovely. And now, finally, like, this is... When she summons the portal here, this is the first time we actually get a look of, oh, that's where she is. She's in some dark tunnel full of green poison fog. Maybe in Sawn or something, but we get to see it for, like, all of no seconds. Because then she jumps into a portal, and we're off. Compare and contrast that with when we're introduced to Lux, because here we immediately get much more of a sense, and by the way, we're going to talk about that transition, we get much more of a sense of the space that she's in. We immediately see that there's books lying behind her, and when we cut to her, we get this wide shot of her, not close-ups of various parts of her body like we got Jinx. We get this very quiet, still, steady, wide shot that's very slowly zooming in on her, where she's just kind of sitting in the library, everything's quiet, nothing else is moving except her. And, like, the boredom, and that's the thing about, like, when you have this trailer, which is, like, 2 minutes long, and you only have, like, 5 seconds to introduce each character, like 5-10 seconds, you need to make the most of them. So this entire shot, everything in it is just designed to show that Lux is bored, she's lonely, nothing's happening. It's like, oh my god, I just want to be anywhere but here. And then, this is such a good little reveal that underneath the homework, she has hidden her dreams. Like her dreams of murdering some other creature with a powerful blast of her magic, I suppose, which is a little bit, maybe a little bit much, but hey, it's only fantasy, right? It's not like she really wants to murder people, we think. But yeah, look at the shot composition. It's just, oh, by the way, speaking of shot composition, we have Lux completely in the center of the image here, right? Then we have her fantasy completely in the center of the image. Lux completely in the center of the image. And then again, she's complete. Like, you have this symmetry going on in every framing, with the only bit of asymmetry in this image is like the pile of books a little bit, and then Lux, who's over on the left side, which again, having these very static, very symmetrical, like, compare and contrast. If you imagine this scene being rendered with like really weird camera angles, like looking at Lux from below or from above or from the side, or the camera's being turned upside down, or the camera's moving, like panning around her in a circle like it's a Michael Bay movie or something like that. Think about how different the energy of this little scene would be, like how different you would perceive Lux's emotional state if the camera was going crazy all over the place. Even if the character animation is exactly the same, you'd get this sense of unease, of fear, of chaos, of something being off or being wrong or being strange. But because everything is so, like, it's just this dead on center, very symmetrical, like you have a pile of books here, you have a pile of books there, you have the chair, which is pretty symmetrical, you have the bookcases symmetrical, 2 candles on either side, symmetrical. You get this very symmetrical, very staid, solid, and visually, like, not boring, because it's quite pretty, but boring in the sense of nothing happens here. Like, it's just the most static environment you could possibly imagine, which then gets thrown into absolute utter chaos as Jinx bursts into existence like, ta-da! And takes a selfie with her new gal pal. I'm sure someone's gonna ship because of this. Which I fully support, by the way. Whee! And again, here we get Yasuo. He's also bored, but not in the same way that Lux is. So we get a different thing going on where we see him like he's preparing the tea. He's like, well, I guess this is the best I can hope for. Like, he's not bored in the same way that Lux is, but he's just unchallenged. Where, like, it's preparing the tea, and then, like, we gotta say, doing spin slashes and jumping and everything. And it's not working whatsoever because Yasuo is so good, he doesn't even need to draw his sword. And we get this lovely shot of, like, the sword, where we're looking at the sword handle, and Yasuo is looking down at it like, I miss using you, my friend. If only there was someone or something, anything, that could possibly challenge me. Some of the similar principles, but a different composition going on with Blitzcrank, where we cut to the little doll that he's made first, and he's throwing the ball at it, and then we get this shot, where, because it's Sawn, there's less of a strict symmetry from side to side, so there's less, at least to me, of that sense of boredom. It's not really so much that he's bored in this, like, it's not that it's a stale environment where nothing happens, it's more that he's alone. And you can see that loneliness, in especially the way that the lighting is used, because, like, we have this big, broad, open scene, right? And where is the light? Most of it is this light bulb right here shining down on Blitzcrank from above, putting him essentially in a lonely little spotlight. You know, like if you think about a stage, when there's one spotlight on one performer on the stage and they look completely alone in a sea of darkness, that's kind of the thing that they're doing here. And there's a little bit of light falling on his puppet friend there, but it's also like just so clearly useless. Oh. Right up until... And at Blitzcrank, we need less time to be introduced to him. Like, Yasuo gets, like, a whole long scene. And Lux and Yasuo both get, like, relatively long scenes of really showing, homework, bored, fantasy, if only something interesting would happen. Hey, what's this? Well, and then, I wish someone would come and challenge me. We get fairly long scenes, a lot of shots of that. By the time we get to Blitzcrank, we kind of get the point. Like, we already understand, okay, Jinx is using that hex tech, whatever the hell, powered by the souls of the Brackern, I'm sure, to travel to different worlds, gather up different people who she wants to have a good old League of Legends match on the Wild Rift with. So at this point, we kind of get it, like we got it, okay, we understand the premise and the plot, so we don't need to spend a lot of time dwelling on how Blitzcrank is feeling. We can just kind of open a portal, Jinx doesn't even need to show, open a portal, teleport him onto the Nexus, and get going. Which leads us on to the opening shot of the Wild Rift itself. And here again, compare and contrast. We still have a shot that's fundamentally like this very slow, stolid camera movement, like doing very little, and we have the enemy Nexus completely centered for us right here, right? But notice the composition of the environment, because it's the same kind of shot that we got with Lux here. Like, it's the same kind of, like, very, like, slow camera movement, centered on an object of interest. But where here, we get this complete symmetry, which is also like where our view is also centered on the character by, again, Lux is being spotlighted in kind of the same way that Blitzcrank was, with like a light coming down from above, making her alone in a sea of dark. And compare and contrast that with this. Because again, object of interest is centered in the frame. We have like this very centered composition, but look at just the way the environment presents itself. This isn't an indoor environment for one thing, which makes it different from Yasuo and Lux's experiences, but also just the composition. We have these wild rolling hills. We have like light dappling all over this thing from many different directions, shadows, lights, different architectural features from left to right. Like even the trees here, like we have this like dense mound of trees over here in shadow, and then we have this slightly less dense group of smaller trees more spread out in the light, and we have like the mid lane leaning over to the enemy team, but even the towers, like, don't really look symmetrical all the way down along the length of it. We have this winding path leading up there. We have this, like, pile of rocks over here in the light that are being highlighted. Then we have this differently shaped, like, there's so much asymmetry. And what that gives us is this sense of wildness. Like, this is a wild rift. This is a wild place. This is a fantasy landscape that promises adventure, that promises something amazing can happen here. And that comes across just by looking at it. Like, imagine again if this shot had been completely symmetrical. Like, from left to right, we had exactly the same kinds of mountains on both sides, exactly the same kinds of trees on both sides. Like, if the turrets had been in completely symmetrical positions, if the path hadn't been winding, if it's just a straight run directly to the enemy Nexus, that's a very different feeling. That would feel like a very different environment, because everything is so curved and bent and asymmetrical, and everything kind of piled up in with this randomness. You get this sense of openness, of wild nature, of unexplored potential that wouldn't really exist in a very rigid, symmetrical environment. Like, again, it might seem interesting to explore the library in Demacia where Lux is hanging out and, like, being bored by her books, but this doesn't look like an environment for a great open adventure. This looks like an environment for sitting down and shutting up for 2 hours while reading something. I don't know. Who knows what she's reading? And that's, again, just the staging is doing so much of that. And that also brings us onto the movement of the camera, which changes a lot. Because, like I said, Jinx has some dynamic camera work going on with, like, all the close-ups and zoom-ins here. That's very, very exciting. It's attention-grabbing. It's the opening thing of a shot of the ad. So, of course, that's what you want. But then, very little camera movement, very little camera work happening until Lux shows up. And by the way, it's literal. Like, when Lux shows up, the moment she shows up, the camera tilts. Boom. All of a sudden, all that symmetry is thrown completely off balance, because now Lux has introduced elements of chaos. We get here, as she jumps onto Lux, this sense of a handheld camera almost, as though we're looking from the perspective of the teleportation camera device that she's holding up Anyway, and again, same thing with Yasuo, very solid camera, doesn't really do a lot of movement. We get a few cuts to a different perspective, it pans over one time, but that's about all that happens until Jinx is introduced, and then, as we zoom in on her, like here, boom, all of a sudden, again, you see that little camera jiggle as though it's being handheld, introducing a sense of chaos into the situation. Which again is like, you get Jinx introducing the energy of the Wild Rift to these really stale, unmoving, boring environments. Well, they're not boring, they're amazing, but like, they have a feeling of being boring. But then once we get to the Wild Rift, notice what the camera does as, like, even before the conflict is joined. Here we get a handheld camera shot where, like, you can see the camera bobbing and weaving around a little bit. And then as Blitzcrank looks up, we follow his gaze onto Lux. Then we follow his gaze down to Teemo, and we get Lux looking in. Like, the camera's doing so many more things now. We get these zooms, we get these pans, we get zoom in, zoom out. And especially once the action is joined, like, that's when the camera gets really dynamic. Now it's moving, now it's tracking different characters, now it's like moving from place to place, cutting from action to action, all over the place. So the energy of the whole thing shifts completely as we get into this. And this is all, like, I'm saying it in a very excited voice because it's a very exciting trailer, and also because I'm trying to get done quickly so that I have time to do the goddamn KDA thing. It's not that this is super exciting or innovative or anything. This is just perfectly basic good filmmaking. Like, this is how good filmmaking works. This is how good filmmaking manipulates your feelings and, like, your interpretation of the action and what's happening on screen in order to get you to feel the things that the narrative wants you to feel. Specifically, as we've already talked about, come to the Wild Rift, everybody. It's so fun here. Spend some money on skins, would you? Anyway, character animation, which is the thing I actually most wanted to talk about. It only took me about, what, 20 minutes to get there? Character animation. And we open with a lovely bit of it, because we get this, like, the shark fin on fish bones, but then we get this bit here, where she's puppeteering him. Rawr, blah, blah, blah. Which immediately introduces us to, like, because she's immediately puppeteering a shark rocket launcher with lipstick on, we immediately get the sense that Jinx is kind of a silly person. Also terrifying, once you think about it, but silly. And she's got a minigun with yordle ears, I guess? And a band-aid with a heart on it. But she's clearly like a fun-loving person, let's call her that. And that comes across also in her character animation from the moment she fully appears on screen. You get the sense of her personality. Because see what she's doing right now over here. As the portal is about to open up in this space right here, look at her. Boom! Like, she's essentially like going, watch this. Boom! And then she jumps in, essentially swan diving backwards into the portal. And what I love about character animation is how quickly, like, we already know Jinx's personality from the moment she does the little puppet show with fish bones. But we also, like, imagine, for example, here, as the portal appears, if Jinx had just stood still, like, completely planted on her feet, raises an arm, the portal appears. You get the sense of someone who's, like, calm and in control. I have summoned this portal for us to pass through. But that's not what Jinx does. When the portal appears, whoom, she goes off her foot, her braids start swinging around, she's, like, slings her gun around her waist, spins herself around, and then, woohoo! And so, like, in everything that she does, in her movement, in her behavior, you get the sense of her personality right there. Like, a lot of people probably won't notice because your attention is naturally going to be drawn to the bright glowing object over on the left here. But the animator is doing such a good job of showing us exactly who Jinx is and how she behaves and what she wants. And I do like, again, it's a little bit of a meta-narrative thing that probably, like, it's not going to translate to anyone watching this ad on TV, if it's ever going to play there, but something that might translate to someone who's familiar with League of Legends is that as we head to the Wild Rift, the world kind of tilts 90 degrees, right? Like, we're transported to a different kind of world through this portal. That's what the camera movement is telling you here, is that we're leaving behind the ordinary world and heading into somewhere extravagant and exciting. And I love the transition that they're about to do here as Jinx. Again, you can see her personality just in the way that she's falling. Whee! Like, swimming through the air, spreading her arms out, just enjoying the ride. But this is a very clever cut. This is a very clever transition. So, we have all these speed lines all around the side, and we have this spiral. naturally leading our attention to the center of the image, because centered, which is where most, like, which is, by the way, centering things in frame is something that, if you watch Mad Max Fury Road, is something that they do a lot. Like, a lot of action happens in the center of the frame, because that, so long as your attention is in the center of the frame, then no matter what you cut to, so long as the object of interest is in the center of the frame, it can be pretty easy to follow, as compared with, for example, if you have something interesting in the frame over here, and then you immediately cut to something where the interesting thing is down here, that can disorient people, which sometimes you want, but for the purposes of a really quick sizzle reel trailer like this one, you don't ever want the audience to feel lost about, oh, where am I supposed to be looking, which is why so much of it is centered. But I love this transition, because we have this spiraling thing, right? These spiraling light lines and all this color and this chromatic aberration and all this fun nonsense and video compression. Thank you very much, YouTube. And then how do we transition into Lux spinning around her wand? Well, by just copying the shape. You see how much, like, it kind of feels like if you continue that line out there, you could kind of... Oh, right. It's like it's not a perfect one-to-one, but it is like it still replicates the same little bit of shape language. And because our attention is already on the center of the screen, we instantly, oh, okay, we have cut to someone spinning around a thing in their hand, and then we can cut out to, like, imagine if we cut from this to this directly. That would be a kind of a different transition overall. Whereas this, like, kind of bridges the gap between Jinx falling through the portal, like, visually, not in terms of narrative, but visually it bridges the gap between Jinx falling through the portal and cutting to Lux doing what she does. And Lux's character animation also gives us a very different impression of the person that we're dealing with here. Because, again, imagine if this had been Jinx sitting here, right? Like, she wouldn't just be spinning this thing. She wouldn't be sitting still. She wouldn't be, like, having her head in her hands. Like, she would be flailing around all over the chair, like, picking up books, throwing them around, like, because she's a chaos agent. But Lux, you get this much more of a sense of, I'm doing my homework, fine. I mean, I don't wanna, but I will. Like, you get, again, the sense of the personality is that Lux is someone who's willing to do the homework. Even if she's not enjoying it, she's kind of resigned to her fate. And I do love the little gesture of, like, she's like, I don't want this. And then as she's like, I want to look at my fantasy drawings. So she looks a little bit to one side, a little bit to the other side. No one's here. No one's seeing me, which I would hope, because you're just demonstrating magic, Lux, and you're in Demacia, which is generally a bad idea. This would have to be like, if we actually tried to place this in the lore, and I wouldn't because it's not canon in any way, shape, or form, this would be before she frees Silas from the mage compound, at which point it's probably a bad idea to sit around in a Demacian library letting your magic leak out through a pen, but whatever. And look at the change in her facial expression, like, when she realized, okay, no one's here, I can take a little peek, like, I can escape into a fantasy world just for a moment. You get that little sense of a little bit of excitement and a little bit of a smile on her face as her impeccably manicured nails get ready to show us her more fun side. That she kind of longs to be a little bit more Jinx-like in some ways, to have a little bit more fun. But still, it's more, you can see it in her face, like the way that she looks at it with, like, the relaxed eyebrows and, like, this is such a lovely fantasy. If only it could be real. But I suppose it never will. I'll be stuck in this stupid library doing homework for the rest of my days. She's a very convincing teenage girl. You know, well, just a very convincing teenager, really, in general. Which is like, because I remember feeling that way about doing homework and shit. I was like, just let me do anything else, I swear to God. And I do like the little choice here from the director's side, to have the book basically obscuring her face, so that she's like barely peeking above the waters of dreaded homework and boredom, when something pulls her out of it, quite literally. And a lovely little reaction here from her too, like, you see that? Like how, like, the portal is appearing. Here we get the shock, where she goes down and then whoop! Whoop. You get that boing, that little boing of, like, of the extreme, and then it kind of relaxes a little bit into just more generalized surprise. Woof. And you get that little bounce, like that little, I really like that little bounce. That's so cartoony. Like, and that's also something that comes across in the character animation here, is that this whole thing has a vibe that's meant to be very cartoony. It's meant to be very silly. It's meant to be very, like, very Tex Avery, very Looney Tunes. And that also comes across just in the aesthetic with which the characters are animated. If you look at the Warriors trailer from 2019, I have a breakdown of that one. Was it from 2019? It was the season opening trailer, whatever. 2020, who knows? That, like, you don't get a bounce like that in that trailer. Like, you don't get this, like, whoa, boing. You don't get that little boing thing going on there. That's a very cartoony aesthetic thing. That didn't happen in the Warriors trailer because that was a serious lore trailer. Like, that was a thing that was, like, really kind of much more grounded in the seriousness of the League of Legends universe. Whereas this one just goes full crazy right from the get-go. Like, when Jinx jumps like that, that's not a jump you could reasonably do as a person. But she can, because she's made of rubber, because she's a cartoon person. There, too. Like, see that reaction as Jinx lands on Lux? She's like... And that, too, is the kind of thing that you wouldn't get in the Warriors trailer, because, again, that's a cartoon reaction to what's going on. God, I wish the image compression wasn't so bad! God damn it, YouTube! Riot, upload these things in 4K, would you? Lovely contrast in their expressions. It's just very good. Like, it's really lovely. We're best friends now! Selfie! Lux is like, what the hell is she doing? She's pretending to take a selfie, right? What she's actually doing is she's summoning a portal behind Lux and distracting her with the thing. As she puts a leg up on the table, grabs Lux by the shoulders and goes... Whoa! And again, we get this cartoon reaction where her hand stays on Lux's shoulder. And it's not until Jinx is, like, already head first through the portal. Like, here, it's at this point that Lux actually kind of reacts to being like, whoa! Being yoinked into the portal. And as she does, you can see her entire body essentially turns into kind of a noodle. Like, you can really see the, like, the bend and the curvature of the character as she transitions from being a solid person into being a cartoon effect. Being spaghettified through this interdimensional portal, whatever. And here's some lovely... I really love Yasuo's interaction with this swordsman, ninja, Brotherhood of Navori, Brotherhood of Shadows, whatever. Because... take a look at how the two characters are acting in terms of their body language. Yasuo is standing... feet together, straight back, holding a teacup, very centered, very calm, but, like, his pose is, like, he's really rigid up and down, right? And this is, in terms of, if you're doing martial arts, you don't want to stand like that, because it makes you really easy to knock over, because you can't control your center of gravity as well as you can if you spread your legs, like the other guy is doing. Spreading your legs like this lets you throw your weight around and really do stuff. But Yasuo can stand like this very neutral, centered, and upright position, because he's not being challenged. This guy has no chance of doing anything to him, and you can see that as the guy's sword connects, right? Yasuo barely moves. Like, barely anything happens. He's doing, like, the minimal amount of movement at all times necessary to block whatever it is this guy is doing. Whereas this guy over here is like... like, he's doing as much movement as physically possible. He's just moving as much as he even can, because he's trying to overpower Yasuo and he can't. And that contrast, again, this is pure cartoon. Like, this is, in a cartoon, you know, when you see, like the big character just holding the head of the little character, and the little character swinging their arms like, ah, I'm gonna get you! I'm gonna get you! Like, that's the kind of dynamic that's going on here. And that comes across just in terms of the body language. Like, we could have Yasuo standing in a combat position, right? Like, as he does in the game, where he's, like, all, like his legs are low, his knees are bent, his center of gravity is low, he's bent forward. You could do that, but then you wouldn't get that same storytelling sense of he's not, like, this is barely even happening to him. He's not paying attention, he doesn't care. It's incredibly boring to him. Because, like, the only time, like, you see, like, he's, like, blocking this guy without looking twice, and then he looks over, oh, he's about to do a jump. Well, poof. I'm just gonna move my spoon into the correct position, block the hilt of the sword, turn it over, force it down to the ground, and smack him in the face. I'm not even sure he hits him, really. Like, this is very much a film punch. Because, like, you imagine there's a curve like that, where he smacks it down over, but the frame rate just doesn't let us see it. And again, notice the cartooniness of this. Boink! You can see his whole head, like, whoa! His whole body stretches, and you can see that the force starts from the head. Like, the head gets knocked up first, and then it kind of drags the rest of his body with it. As though he was made of a rubber band. And you can kind of see how he comes together, like, zoink! Snaps back into shape as he gets knocked upwards into the air. And again, not even looking, not even glancing over. It's just like... And Yasuo is doing the bare minimum, right? Like I said, like he's not moving his feet. His feet aren't changing position. He's like maybe rotating his hip a little bit. I think he rotates... Yeah, there. You can see he rotates his hip just a little tiny bit. Just to get the spoon into position. But even when he gets impacted, like even when the guy hits him with all of his might, like slam, you can see Yasuo's body, like there's no shockwave, there's no force coming through his arm into his body that's moving him or jostling him. He's unlike this guy, like where Yasuo does the little sweep downwards with the spoon. This guy is like, you can see him just, whoa. And again, that establishes the contrast between their two animations. This is such a good move. Because, like, the guy's trying to stab Yasuo, right? It seems like it should be easy, but then Yasuo kind of forces him to change direction. Like, he just kind of pushes the sword down, twists his wrist, and then instead of going through his neck, the sword just kind of goes straight past. Oh! And then he locks him into an arm guard with his own thing. Oh, that's so good. And again, is that thing of this guy, like, every time this guy makes a move, any move, his whole body is just, like, doing work all the time. Where Yasuo is just, he's just moving his arm, really. And... doink! Oh, here's a clever little trick. You see the size of the spoon here? As Yasuo throws it, boom, all of a sudden, it's like 3 times bigger. And then it shrinks back down as it spins back to his hand, just so that you can see it, like just to help you, like because if the spoon had been its normal size as he threw it, it would be almost impossible to see it actually hit the guy's face against this background because we're so far away from the action. And this is also complete cartoon because you get that vonk. Like, again, complete cartoon physics. It's lovely. And then we get Jinx blowing a hole through the wall. And now Yasuo's stance changes. Now his behavior changes. Now he drops his center of gravity, legs all the way down low, jumps into the air. Now his center of gravity is low. He's balancing. You can see he's in tension. His arm is in tension. His body is in tension. He's getting ready to do something. And here comes Jinx. I love this little shot because... Vavoom! I love the way that she kind of lopes into view, like, because she kicks the wall down, boom. And then look how, look at the squash and stretch as her foot comes down, like, zoing, boink. And you can kind of see how she kind of slides her whole body forwards, like just dragging the weight of the minigun with her. And she just has the aesthetic of a classic Looney Tunes character. Just in the way she moves. Those little gestures with just the little bit of squash and stretch on her leg to really kind of sell the rubberiness of her motion. Compare and contrast that with Yasuo, by the way, who's like, even here when he's moving really fast, he's also very solid. Like, there's no squashing and stretching going on that you can see. There's no rubberiness. There's no cartooniness with him. At least not yet, but it comes in just a moment. Here, he's much more anime, really, because, like, he's landing, and his anime hair is falling into place, and he looks at his cup. You caused an injury to my cup. And then he does this anime, ooh, I'm gonna get you. And then Jinx, like, look at her body language, is like, what are you gonna do about it? 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 I have a portal. I have a portal. I have a portal! But you can see that she's taunting him, right? Like, you can see it's like, what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? Are you gonna get me? Are you gonna get me? Come at me, bro. Come at me, bro. I'm just gonna activate my portal and I'll get out of here. Just, hang on. Wait. Dunk, 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 dunk. And I love her expressions. Like, her expressions are so good. Like, this is such a fucking troll face. It's lovely. Come at me. Come at me. And then she, like, now she's supremely confident. Like, she transitions from mocking him to supreme confidence. It's like, I've got my portal device. Everything's gonna be totally fine. And then you can see the change. It's like, like, the portal isn't activating. She's looking up. She's like, oh, wait, hang on. No, wait, hang on. Activate, 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 activate! And that's all just the character animation giving us that little narrative of like, uh-oh. Of her realizing that the portal isn't doing exactly what she wants it to just in time, so you get this moment of tension where Yasuo is like, he throws the cup up into the air. Lovely setup and payoff here, by the way. He throws the cup up into the air, and then he dives off the table, and now look how Yasuo's anatomy behaves. Look how his arm gets stretched out. Like, look how cartoony all of a sudden his movement is. Look how the sword itself, how it bends and completely twists around his body like it's made of rubber, almost, as he swings all the way back up into springing into action. All of a sudden, all that solidness, all of that unmoving solidity and seriousness that Yasuo had, all of a sudden he's just a little bit more flexible, isn't he? All of a sudden he's just a little bit more cartoony. And I love the detail. Like, he throws the cup into the air, then he leaps off the table, has it spin around, and as it lands back down, the cup comes down and lands perfectly in the center, because Yasuo leaves the place in a better state than he found it, which I think is lovely. So, Blitzcrank's little friend here. Notice, by the way, that his friend kind of looks a little bit like Teemo, like just a little bit with the hat and the, like, just a tiny bit. Where he, like, this metal ball, this leather ball, whatever the hell it is, notice how it bounces off the glove. Like, it lands, and then it kind of splatters out, and then it snaps back into shape, and then it snaps back. And you can even see it in motion, like, if you pay attention, you can see that the ball expands right as it hits. You can see the expansion happening. Which, again, is just it's a little animation technique just to show the impact a little bit more clearly, which, again, you probably wouldn't use in a very serious-minded type of animation, but you use it here just because it's a little cartoon thing that you can do to make the thing look more fun. And I do love the tiny detail that the little fan on this sphere thing that constitutes the head of the doll, as the ball hits, the fan just gives a little rotation like that. That's a lovely little detail. And then let's look at Blitzcrank's animation himself, because he actually has a couple of interesting things going on. But I do like this shot where it's like he raises his arm, he fires his rocket grab, and it's like zip, and then bonk, and then again, cartoon physics. Gravity doesn't affect the arm until it reaches the end of its push, and then it falls down. Grabs the ball, and then like slowly gets reeled back in. And you get that sense of, like, this is not... Blitzcrank isn't having a ton of fun throwing the ball to this thing, but it's just, like, it's all he's got, man. Like, it's the only thing he has. He's not excited about it. He's just doing it because the alternative is to feel even more lonely and sad. And we are instantly endeared to him. Which is partly down to Blitzcrank's character design. Like, Blitzcrank has like a classic, at least his updated Wild Rift version and the updated version that they've been going for in other League of Legends media rather than the actual game. Seriously, Riot, give him a visual update. He needs this character model in game. Where we have this like big, round, kind of friendly looking body, these big silly hands, and then this face that's entirely defined by just two big glowing eyes. And you can see it here, right? Like, oh, my doll broke. Like, just that little tilt of the head right there turns his expression from surprise to sadness. And then he does a little sigh. And then you really get, oh no, oh poor baby boy. My son, my steam-powered son. Now, something that's really subtle about Blitzcrank, which is you hardly notice it when you actually see the thing in motion, but you see that? Like, if you take a look at Blitzcrank's body here, he's sitting still. Like, Blitzcrank isn't moving in this particular moment, but his body, in a lot of his animation, there's always this little mechanical jiggle going on with him. Which is like, it's really hard to see in full motion, but you can kind of see it that, like, there's this little jiggliness with him, as though he's being powered by an engine that's rotating or something, like as though there's some kind of internal vibration happening on him that forces him to shake around a little bit in a slightly unnatural way, and you can kind of see that also. This is really subtle stuff. I'm really impressed with the animators who did this. You can also see it, like, as he does the sigh, right? And as he sighs, and he's getting ready to have his body collapse down and like do the breathe out of the sigh. But you see that, like, you see how there's this little stutter, dunk, before his head follows. It just kind of sticks and then ka-tunk, almost as though it's like some kind of mechanical thing that isn't quite properly lubricated or something. And again, you can see it here as he lands. You see that? You see how his body is vibrating ever so slightly? Even his head, like everything about him is just vibrating a little bit. And that really gives you the sense of him as this machine thing that's like a little bit kind of old and clunky, and like maybe could be better put together. He's got rust all over him, after all. And that's just all over his character animation, and it's so lovely. Oh, by the way, this is a reference. This is a reference to Lux's original splash art, where she was also walking on top of some architecture and doing kind of a similar pose, albeit with a much uglier splash art. It's just a little reference for the OG League of Legends fans out there, I suppose. It doesn't mean anything, it's just fun. And then we get the opposition. And what is this team comp? We have, I guess, Malphite top, and then Camille is the marksman, I suppose? Or Zed. Probably. Can you play Zed in the bot lane these days? I don't know. Ahri in the mid lane, I suppose. And then Camille would be the jungler, and then Zed is the AD carry. Kinda, sorta. Braum support, obviously. Not that the other team has a much better composition, because it's like, would be, like, Lux is fighting Malphite, so she's in the top lane, I suppose. Yasuo would be the mid lane, and then Teemo in the jungle? Or, oh, no, it would be a bot lane Teemo Blitzcrank. That's what it would be, like the maximum toxic lane. And then Lux in the mid lane, Yasuo top, and Jinx jungle? No, Yasuo would have to jungle. I don't know how the hell that composition would work. Doesn't matter, because it's not about compositions at all. It's just about having fun. One little fun detail, you see how there's a little smiley face? Just a little like pumpkin faced smiley face in the explosion. Have a nice day! I think that's fun. So, the enemy team is assembling and spawning onto the rift, and Malphite gives this challenging roar. By the way, Malphite, baby, can we please have that visual update in League of Legends as well? Because, like, holy shit, he looks so much better. And Lux, like, you remember Lux, she had a dream about murdering an innocent rock monster? Well, she's like, my dream of murder is coming true! And she flips her staff, like, to get ready, like, cha-ting! Because, yay! The rock monster I have longed to kill. I hope it has children! Oh, the Krugs must fear her. And speaking of character animation, once again, look at Camille. She's doing exactly the thing that Yasuo was doing previously. Legs together, upright, arms, like, shoulders back, steady position, like dignity, calmness, strength. Compare and contrast that with Zed here, who has an enormous upper body with these freaking shoulder pads on him. Jesus. Who's like all like legs down, ready to fight, martial arts pose with the blades forward, and Ahri as well, and Braum cracking his knuckles. Like this, you can see just from the way that these characters are posing here, you get a sense of their different personalities. Like you can tell that Zed isn't the same kind of person as Camille, isn't the same kind of person as Braum, isn't the same kind of person as Ahri, just from their body language. And then I love the little detail that Yasuo sees that enemy team and is like, a challenge. Like, you can see his interest has been piqued. And then Teemo's just like, good luck, have fun! Yay! I'm Teemo! And Blitzcrank is like, oh, he's so cute! And Jinx, of course, ever the element of chaos. As Lux gets down, I'm gonna do my heroic action pose before I go and murder that rock monster. Jinx ruins the whole thing by going... And I love the reaction shots to that, like the way that the characters react, like the rocket comes past. And Lux does like, oof! Like you can see she kind of guards her face and turns away from it. Yasuo, like barely reacts. You can see how it sweeps his ponytail forward. He's just like, ugh, what the heck was that? And Teemo gets this like, like, whoa! I'm gonna fight whoever did that. You can see he's like, he puts his little dukes up. It's funny. A little bit cheating to spawn Jinx into the game with access to her ultimate immediately, though. That's overpowered. I feel like Riot should nerf that. And so Jinx pushes her way forward. Like, she pushes her way underneath the armpit of Blitzcrank. It's like, make way! Whee! She's just so eager to go. And I love, there's a little bit of coyote time that's about to happen here as Jinx runs over to the side of the platform and jumps. And this is coyote. Well, it's not quite coyote time, but it's a similar principle to coyote time. She jumps into the air, turns around, goes, come on, everybody. And gravity, like, just doesn't affect her for a while. Just for a little while, gravity doesn't touch her. And it's named after, in Looney Tunes cartoons, when the Roadrunner gets Wile E. Coyote to run over a cliff and he hasn't realized that he's over a cliff yet, and he's just like running and running, and eventually he looks down, and then the moment he looks down, that's when gravity actually kicks in and then he falls. That's coyote time. And it's used all over animation, like that same principle of like, we'll just suspend gravity for as long as it's convenient because we need the character to get off. We need Jinx to get off this key pose. We need to, like, have her do the wave. And if she was already, like, down here disappearing off the bottom of the edge, it wouldn't be as effective. So we just suspend gravity for a little while so she can jump into the air, hover for a bit, and then once we have sold the pose, like, once we can see, oh, she's doing a come with me, guys, kind of pose, that's when gravity kicks in. And you can see how gravity kicks in because it affects Fishbones last. So first, her butt starts falling, then the rest of her body gets pulled along, and eventually Fishbones also has to surrender to gravity, getting pulled down by Jinx, rather than by gravity itself. Whee! Which again, it's all about that cartoony feeling. And then you see, like, Lux is like, oh well, my new best friend, she's just like that, let's go have some fun, shall we? And Yasuo was like, I shall carry this entire game. And then he's gonna go 0-15 and flame the jungler, but, you know, don't think about that. Not when we're doing the trailer. And again, character animation. How are we like, as we get this shot with the characters running down the hill, how are we introduced to them? Jinx is like, ha 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 ha, woohoo! Because that's her personality. You know exactly who she is from the way that she's just running down this hill. Yasuo, on the other hand, is in his own personal anime. You can see it, like, it's just like, Shonen yo, kiite kure, ningen nande taishita mon janai sa. He's got Naruto themes playing in his head as he's like running very steadily across the ground, hand on the sword, ready to fight. Lux is a little bit more like Jinx, like she's ready for adventure. She's spinning her staff around and going, yay! I'm on an adventure to murder a rock monster. And then Blitzcrank he's just kind of happy to be there. Like he's just kind of following them along as like, I'm playing with my new friends. Carrying Teemo in his hand, and Teemo with his mushroom up, like ready for the fun. On the other hand, the enemy team seem altogether a little bit more serious, don't they? Like, especially Camille, like she looks like she's got murder on her mind. And so you get this contrast between the two teams where, like, the team that we've been following, our protagonists, our heroes, essentially, have this this wild, fun-loving personality thing where they're just, like, kind of charging down the hill. Jinx is, like, jumping into the air and shooting a rocket for no goddamn reason, because why not? And then the other team is, like, altogether more serious-minded. Like, they're all running like Yasuo is running, basically. They've all got anime themes playing in their heads. We're about to take these people out. We are a ranked 5 team who have all spawned into the same Wild Rift games, and we're going to take out these casuals. That's kind of the feeling that you get from it. And then the camera... Like, the camera before this has been cutting between the two, right? Like, we've been cutting from one side to the other. Like, enemy side, our side, enemy side, our side. And now we get our side, enemy side, and then as Camille jumps into action, we get this sweep of the camera where all of a sudden the two sides are united. Like the two sides come together in the same space. Now their two spaces have been joined, which means now they can start to affect each other. For example, a little bit of like, woof. Oh, those are some powerful shurikens. As the two anime protagonists, or well, the anime protagonist and the edgy anime protagonist get ready to do battle. And then we get to Lux. And again, her personality is being so, like, again, compare and contrast the motion that Yasuo and Zed have with each other, right? They're constantly, like, doing their cool poses. Yasuo is trying to tackle the guy. They're constantly looking very serious, like, no wasted movements. Zed comes out of the shadows, throws some shurikens. Yasuo, like, kind of dodges under it, gets ready to pounce back the other way. Slides across the ground a little bit because that's anime cool. And then spring back into action. But take a look at how Lux is moving. Like, just as a character, as a person, how she's moving. She's got her eyes on the prize, the rock monster that she's been longing to murder this whole time. And she's spinning up her staff, and like she's doing these little flourishes and having this little bit of fun. You can see as she sees Malphite getting ready to throw his Q, she's like, whee! She's having fun with it. Doing like gymnastics from the cheer team, dodging out of the way of Ari's Q, also her Q, yeah. Like, whoops, just doing a little spin around there. And I do like the jump that she does here. Like, when she lands, with this perfect gymnastics landing, right? And then she leaps, and look at this foot right here. Look how long that foot just stays. Like, the entire rest of her body is in the air while this foot has barely left the ground, and then it finally follows her as she transitions into this little hop and a skip over towards Malphite. And I do love that there's a bit of background storytelling going on where, like, Ari is riding on top of Malphite, right? She jumps over to the side, lands on this little bit of cliff, and supports him with some fire support. But in the meantime, you can also see Jinx in the background, just slowly creeping up from behind, essentially mounting an ambush from the jungle, which I always love when Jinx does that in my League of Legends games. And we get this tracking shot where, like, the camera's tracking, like, these dramatic bullet holes appearing in the ground, and you get this handheld feeling of, like, these little shocks and bumps, and like, oh no, she's about to get hit, and then Braum is here. Sometimes icy heart just need warm smile. And Ari's like, oh, I can't stay mad at you, big guy. And Camille also gets a little bit of squash and stretch going on here. Very subtle, like you barely see it, but like her blade like enters first and it's really stretched and elongated. And then as she lands, it turns back to like its normal shape. Just to give that little extra zoop as she jumps in and sits there. And I really like how they're using her physicality, because Camille famously has the biggest ass in League of Legends, right? Like, that's the thing about the giant Hextech hips that she's got going on. So they're using that as part of her key posing, because, like, she lands here. We have this key pose that she's getting, like, picking out a target, getting ready to jump. And now she's actually, like, steadying up to do the push with her legs, and she's just leaning completely forwards. And you get this shape, like, which is like... It's just her legs with a head and some arms sticking out of it. Which is really good. And I really like that. I really like that they're using those really big, wide hips as like kind of an anchoring point for Camille. And her movement. And then she jumps into frame, essentially. And we get this tracking shot of the camera. Like, Teemo's just planting his little mushrooms, all innocent, like a good boy, because he's such a nice person. And it's like, ah! And then we get this. Uh-oh. I have just fucked up. I'm gonna kill you. I'm gonna kill you. Oh, fuck. Oh, it's so good. I love this shot so much. Because it's like a dog being like that's seen a treat and then it's getting yanked away by the collar. Like, nope. It's so good. You can see how she turns into spaghetti as she's just getting yanked away by Blitzcrank. Good boy, Blitzcrank. And you can see it here too. Like, this is partly due to the blurring effect on the camera, but you can also see how Camille is being like stretched thin by the rapid movement. And then as she starts to slow down, she's allowed to fill out a little bit more. She regains control over herself and her shape, does a cool flip through the air, and does a superhero landing, essentially. Right in the middle, like, and you can see she's like Ha! You did not throw me into anything. I shall now return and destroy you. Oh, no. And it's the ball. It's the little ball that Blitzcrank was throwing to the doll in the opening shot. Like, he... Okay, so the ball is a lovely little bit of setup and payoff. Let's follow it. Because the ball appears for the first time in Blitzcrank's shot right here, right? The ball he's throwing back and forth with a little doll of a friend that he doesn't have. It feels like a Moo could have filled this role, but I don't actually know if he's in Wild Rift yet. Then we transition into the actual Wild Rift. And here we get, like, the setup is that the ball is part of Blitzcrank's story, right? Like, he just wants someone to throw the ball around with. I wish I had a little friend to throw a ball to. That would be nice. That's the setup, the ball, right? Then we have a reminder, which is the reminder that the ball is relevant, that the ball matters to Blitzcrank's narrative arc here, which is that Teemo shows up, and he's like, "Hey, you dropped this. Wanna be my friend? We can go kill people with poison mushrooms." And that's the little friendship offering that Teemo is giving him. Like, he's giving him the ball back, and then at the climax of their friendship, at least in this particular animated short, where Blitzcrank saves Teemo from a vengeful Camille. Yeah. The payoff is that as Camille lands in the middle of Teemo's mushrooms, it's the ball. Donk! Oh no. It's the ball that sets off the nuclear poison explosion that destroys her. And I love Camille's expression here, because, like, you get this dawning realization, like, and then it's like, I can't believe these little assholes. Boom! And high five with the giant mechanical hand and his tiny little hand. It's so cute. They're so cute together. It almost makes me feel like Teemo isn't a monster. And it's kind of hard to see with the camera movement, like the camera's jiggling around because it's doing the handheld thing. But you still can see, like, the jiggliness, like the mechanical jiggliness of Blitzcrank's animation, especially if you take a look at how he does the high five. You can see how the finger rears back and then ka-tunk, ka-tunk, ka-tunk. Like, it kind of moves like a piston, right? Like, it rears back and it does this, and then it falls back down, which is just lovely. And then, anyway, back to the edgelords, as Yasuo manages to block a shuriken with his bracer, actually making use of it for once in his life, not getting taken out immediately by any damage that comes his way, which is lovely. It's a change of pace from how Yasuo's play in the game. And then we get this cool shot. Like, it's very brief, but I do like that Zed's glowing eyes are showing up through the dark smoke. Like, that's a really nice little shredder detail, like, making him like an anime villain even more. And here you can see, like, again, character acting as Yasuo is running towards him. Like, he's already tried to charge Zed once already, right? Like, the first time he did that, Zed just dissolved into a shadow and then some shurikens appeared from somewhere else. And now Yasuo was like, okay, I've seen this before. You can see him looking away to think for a second, forming a plan, and then he looks ahead again, and then this little smile curls up, like, I know what you're gonna do. I have read all of your moves. I will not go 0-16. So he charges through the shadow, and then instantly wind wall, because he knows what Zed is going to do. Like, he's already figured out his moves. And the anime duel is on for real. And this is the first time, by the way, again, setup and payoff, we get the setup of Yasuo's sword that he never gets to draw it, because he never needs to use it for anything, because he's so overpowered, right? But now he has a worthy opponent, so now he draws his sword, blocks the shurikens with the wind walls, Zed darts away, and then he looks over at his sword and is like, well, I'll be damned. An actual challenge. And he's really happy about that. And then off he goes. And Lux dodging herself another Q. I quite like this. Like, there's nothing exceptional going on here. This is just good character animation. But, like, you see how Lux, like, she leaps forward off this leg, right? She kicks off the ground with that. Then she pivots around the leg that she's putting this leg down on the ground. She's kicking off from the ground, pivoting around it in order to get up into this little spring. This little spin jump, whatever the hell. And then you can see the magic starts to trail after, like, her staff lights up, and then the magic starts to trail after it, and you get these really lovely shapes. like spiraling, rotating shapes that kind of follow her movements around and really accentuate her athleticism. I wish Lux was that agile in-game. That would be lovely. Just as long as I don't have to play against it. And then she transitions that, like that spinning motion all the way around, twirling it around her body, and then drops to her knee, or rather drops down the knee, and then gets this really strong key pose where you can just see she's projecting the magic forwards. Locking poor Malphite in place as she gets ready for the execution. You can just see it in her face, can't you? Murder, 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 murder! And Malphite is dead. Well, probably dead. He's just exploding a little bit. It's probably fine. I'm sure it's cool. And Jinx, of course, is always fascinated with explosions. And here we get the wind down. This is the end of the animation, where Lux has finally completed her life's ambition, and everybody has, by the way. All of the needs that we were introduced to, like Lux is bored, she wants to kill a rock monster, well, she gets to do that now. Yasuo is bored, he wants some kind of a reasonable challenge, and he gets to do that here with Zed. And then Blitzcrank is lonely, he wants a little friend, he has found that with Teemo. Everybody who wants and needs, at least of the protagonists, we don't know what the antagonists of the other team want, it doesn't matter, they're not real people, have been met. They've all fulfilled their ambitions, and now Jinx gets exactly what she wants. The whole point of her going around finding all these people and getting them onto the Wild Rift is because she wanted to play a fun game of League of Legends, and now that everybody else is having fun, she's gotten exactly what she wanted too, and you can see it, like she's looking at Lux going, yay, blow up that rock monster! Hey Teemo, you found a friend, that's excellent! As Teemo runs over to join Blitzcrank, and then Jinx has also fulfilled her want. You can see she's just looking around, enjoying it, having fun with the chaos and the madness that's happening as Ahri leaps off of Brahm's shield back here to get into an attack. And so it brings the narrative, even though there isn't much of it, it brings the narrative of this animated short full circle. Like, we introduce these characters, each of them have a quest, a want, a need, and by the end of it, each of them has also had that quest, want, or need fulfilled, which is very narratively satisfying, and it's the kind of thing that's like, that's really fucking hard to do in 2 minutes. I want to stress that, like, getting all of this shit done, all of this, like, it's testament to the skill of the character animators that they can animate the characters so that you understand exactly what it is they need, what it is they want, what it is they're looking for, just from the way they're animated, just from the way that they behave. You get that in the space of, like, it can't even be half the short that's like spent introducing the characters. You get very little time to introduce the idea that Yasuo just wants to use his sword, that Lux just wants to escape the boredom of homework, that Blitzcrank just wants to find a friend to have some fun with and throw a ball around. You barely get a moment to do that. That's really fucking hard. Like, some people struggle to do that kind of thing in 200 pages of a novel. So getting that all across in such a short time. And this is like, we're by 1 minute and 5 seconds into this thing. That's as long as you have to introduce like 4 different characters with 4 different wants and needs. And then you have like the rest of like 1 minute and 10 seconds to resolve those wants and needs and storylines. That's hard. Like, that takes a good director, it takes good scripting, it takes really good storyboarding, and it takes good animators to accomplish all of that in such a short period of time, like to condense all of that down in a way that's still digestible, that's not confusing or overwhelming, but which can be sold to like a general watching audience, like who are looking up trailers and stuff on the internet, to sell them those different fantasies, those different ideas of what Wild Rift can be for you, and those different feelings. That's hard work. So I just full props to the everybody who worked on the team for this damn thing, but also like especially to the director who had a difficult job putting all of this shit together in such a short, compressed time frame. It's like, this the thing about animation is like, I usually talk about character animation. I usually gush about character animation. It's my favorite goddamn thing in the whole world. But it is important also to like just recognize how many people have to do so much incredibly good work in order to get something like this to come together and function the way that it's intended to. And when you do it right, the way that they do with this trailer right here, the first time I watched it, you probably don't think about all of this. You probably don't think about like how hard the director and the script supervisor and the storyboarder have to work in order to just cut down so that it takes as little time as possible to get across as much information as possible. That's difficult process. You don't think about that because the tragedy of animation and the tragedy of good storytelling always is that when you do it well, almost nobody sees the sheer amount of hard work that goes into it. When you do it well, it's invisible. Which is one of the really cool things about this is why I do these videos, is because I just, with whatever knowledge I have, I want to spotlight just how much expertise and craft actually has to go into this stuff to make it work at all. And this is a good example of it. It is just an advertisement. It's just an ad. Like, it's just a t-shirt. It says, play our game, buy our skins, give us money. That's the function of the thing. That's the purpose of it. But a lot of really creative, talented, good artists put a ton of hard work into making it more than just that. More than just a placard with text that says, League of Legends Wild Rift is a mobile game you should play and pay money for the skins. To give you a feeling, to give you an experience, to give you, like, a little bit of story. A little bit of imagination that you can project yourself onto. Like, because if League of Legends had a bigger fanfiction community, and it really doesn't, which kind of sucks, but if it did, this trailer could be the basis for so many good fanfics. Like, just because there's some character interactions being set up, like Blitzcrank and Teemo going on friendship adventures, Yasuo, forever the edgy anime swordsman looking for a worthy challenge, Jinx, the chaos agent, always trying to get everybody else to have fun, and Lux, the sort of wide-eyed dreamer, always a little bit off in her head, like having fantasies about the grand adventures she would go on if only she had, like, the opportunity to do so. There's a lot of good character there, which, again, if there was more of an active fanfiction community in League of Legends, undoubtedly they would take off from this kind of thing the same way that people used to take off from literally any animated short that was released for the Overwatch universe. But that's not, unfortunately, the world that we live in. Whew. Anyway, that was an hour and 20 minutes. At least as I'm recording this, I'll probably try and edit it down a little bit. And then later today, we're going to do it all over again because the KDA music video is coming out. So, if you want to watch that, then I have a like button, a comment button, and a subscribe button down below. Those are all buttons that do things. Specifically, the things that they do is that they make sure that you see my videos, and also that my videos get shown to other people so that they get views and make ad money and I can pay my rent, because that's how YouTube business works. So if you want to help me with that, clicking those buttons is a good way to do it. If you'd like to help me more directly, then I have a Patreon, a merchandise store, and a tip jar. You can use them if you want to. If you don't want to, please don't worry about it. It's completely fine. At the end of my videos, though, even, like, whether you want to support me or not, I'd like to encourage you to, generally speaking, support content that you enjoy with direct support whenever you can and however much you can. Because for online content creators, especially people who rely on advertisement for their revenue, like $1 can quite literally be the same as 1,000 or tens of thousands of views on certain videos on YouTube or on web pages. So if you have online content that you enjoy, some creators that you really want to be able to do their work, especially if they're smaller or niche creators, consider supporting them directly with anything you can, whenever you can, because you make so much more of a difference than it might feel like with even the smallest contributions. Anyway, right, I have a second channel. I should advertise that as well. I'm playing Hades over there. I'm playing Legends of Runeterra very occasionally. I've just finished up Final Fantasy X, and we're doing some Monster Hunter World streams over there as well, hunting some of the high-ranking monsters with viewers and friends in co-op, which has been a hell of a lot of fun. So if you want to see any of that, then you can subscribe to that thing as well. Anyway, that's enough shilling and self-promotion. Thank you very much for watching. Please remember to wash your hands and wear a mask if you're going to be around other people. If you're American, vote if you can. It's good for everybody when as many people as possible do that, generally speaking. And have solidarity and act in solidarity with those people who are trying really hard right now to make the world just, you know, a slightly better place.